He'll make it for sure. Now that's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
Hey, Luke.
Yes, Gene Simmons?
He's probably the best when it comes to this stuff.
Thanks, Gene.
You've got the touch. You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Hello and welcome to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle in a very special Christmas edition. We're 1 week away from Christmas and I have a very special guest. While Cody and his family are off on a Griswold family vacation, I've called on Simon Mitchell to step in once again, and there's a lot to pick his brain about, so I can't wait to get stuck into it. We've got his South East Melbourne Phoenix to talk about, and they've got an open-air game to celebrate Christmas to look forward to on Saturday as well, so we'll get stuck into that. I can't wait to get his thoughts on what Bryce Cotton is doing right now. The Illawarra Hawks and the Sydney Kings, they keep on winning, and they've got their own Christmas Day game to now look forward to. Tasmania Jack Jumpers, they're on a winning streak, and they've also made a big change over the past week, which we'll get stuck into. We're seeing something very rare right now, and it's Melbourne United on a losing streak, which I'm sure Simon's not too unhappy about, to be fair, but I'm also thrilled to get his thoughts on it. They've also made a signing with Dash Daniels for next season and beyond as well. Montrezl Harrell is back for the 36ers, and things aren't getting a whole lot better for the New Zealand Breakers and the Cairns Taipans. Just that, in one sentence, sounds like a lot for us to get through, so let's get straight into it. I'm Chris Pike, but as always, thanks to Tab Touch and Hoop 7, and I'm joined by Simon Mitchell, the inaugural South East Melbourne Phoenix coach and the current GM of basketball at the Phoenix. Simon, it's good to talk to you again.
You too, Chris. And it's a huge week in basketball, you just said.
Yes.
And it's only getting bigger from here. So, it's been an amazing season so far.
No, so thank you for stepping in while Cody is in Melbourne right now and he's about to head over to Sydney. So his family might have had a few too many things planned for him to be able to sit in front of a microphone. But I think he would have enjoyed seeing your game on Sunday in the Throwdown, Simon, where you got the job done and his old mate Rob Lowe didn't stop ruffling feathers like he's very, very prone to do, isn't he?
He's great at it. It was a great night. I managed to get Cody some tickets, so that there weren't too many left, but we managed to get him some and look after him there. But Rob certainly, he loves ruffling a feather or two, yes. But it doesn't get in the way of his performance. Certainly, he's and he turned back the clock with. Well, I don't even know if he turned back the clock because I don't think I've ever seen him dunk on someone's head like that. So that's fun to watch. It's
2 dunks in 2 weeks like that. I mean, he's. Yeah, like you said, I don't think it is turning back the clock because I've never seen him do 2 better dunks in his entire career than those 2 over the past 2 weeks.
He's found the fountain of youth, and he's been playing some really good basketball. I mean, even last year, if he twisted that clock back to last year, and that he was cameoing for the Melbourne United at that point. But when he was given opportunity, he was playing some really key minutes for them, and I think they missed him in the end. And and he's certainly picked that up again this year and playing some good ball for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get stuck into everything going on in the NBL, the last 24 hours, some fascinating news has come to bear. Simon, I can't wait to get your thoughts on this. So our old friend of the show and Adelaide 36ers legend, Scott Ninnis, this time, it's only 5 months ago, he thought he would be coaching the Adelaide 36ers right now in the NBL. What happened there all happened, and now I guess everybody's put it behind them, and all of a sudden he's now being appointed head coach of the Adelaide Lightning in the WNBL for the rest of this season and beyond. I wasn't sure if it was some sort of an April Fool's joke when I first saw it, but it's now come to fruition. He'll be coaching this weekend. I know he's excited about it, and I'm thrilled for him to get straight back into basketball because there was a danger that he'd be lost to basketball completely with what happened a few months ago. But what was your reaction when you found out?
It doesn't sound like it was too different than yours. I actually, first thing I did was check the date and just am I time traveling here? It came from left field for me, but yeah, I mean, certainly a great basketball mind and a great stalwart of the game, and I think Adelaide Lightning are lucky to have him.
Do you think it makes much of an adjustment? Is it much different coaching NBL to WNBL? Is it something you can transition to quite quickly?
Well, I haven't been down that road.
No.
I've certainly coached women's teams before, and I think the differences and variations are subtle. I think the most important thing with women athletes is to just, and men as well, treat them as athletes. Don't differentiate. Don't treat people differently. Put demands on them. Hold everyone accountable. And whatever your basketball beliefs are, they translate to the different game. Now, certainly the way you go about things can be different. I think the women's game is becoming very pick and roll orientated like the men's, but I still think the element to high-low action and in sealing and work in the post is still more prevalent in the women's game, and that's what makes it attractive, and that's what one of the beauties of it. And it does have it can be differentiated from the blokes game. And so as long as you're still across those sort of X's and O's and how to manipulate games, then you should be fine. Basketball's basketball to many, to much of the extent.
Is it something you would have ever considered or would consider in the future?
As I said, I've coached women's teams. I've coached youth league women's. Did an NBL 1 season, but no, crossing over to WNBL, no, not really. I don't think it's something that it doesn't interest me. I'd be happy to mentor a female coach. I would love to see more women coaching in the WNBL, and for that reason, I think Joey Wright during the week said something about, or in the past couple of weeks said something about, would you be interested in the Boomers coach? Or Scott Roth definitely did. No. Yes. No, I'm not interested. It should be an Australian. Yep. I kind of feel the same way, that there's plenty of great female coaches floating around, and I'd love to see them get more opportunity in the women's game. So for me to step into that, I wouldn't have interest in it. But for mentoring or working with a female coach, certainly, I think it would be fun. I do enjoy the game.
What about mentoring your wife in a head coaching role? How would that go?
No. There's some places you just don't want to go.
Aside from that, though, would she be interested in a head coaching role down the track at some point?
Without a doubt. No, I think, again, opportunity is scarce. It's a tough league to break into. Had some time there with the Flyers as assistant coach, but they ousted the coaching roster there after the last season's championship win, and she's sitting on the sidelines at the moment and just observing it all.
Oh, no. All right. Well, we'll keep pushing her case forward, and who knows where she might pop up. Let's get stuck into some NBL talk, Simon. So across round 12, a lot of points scored again, which we'll get to shortly. So it started with things not getting any better for the New Zealand Breakers. So the Tasmania Jack Jumpers went over to Auckland in the old North Shore Events Centre and got the win 100-76 to start things off. And then the Phoenix probably lost a game that I imagine Josh King would, and you probably feel like, Simon, that they let slip when the Brisbane Bullets ended up winning 116-108. And then Friday night, single game, top of the table clash, the Illawarra Hawks got one back on Melbourne United 106-93. Montrezl Harrell back for the 36ers, joining Kendrick Davis in that lineup, and they gave another loss to the New Zealand Breakers 111-94. And then a remarkable last 15 minutes of this game where the Perth Wildcats put up just about 50 points in that stretch to beat the Cairns Taipans 128-92. And then on Sunday, the throwdown first up, South East Melbourne Phoenix, 2 straight throwdown wins now, 109-97 over Melbourne United. And then last up, the Sydney Kings 93-81 over the Brisbane Bullets. We'll break down all of that in a bit more detail, step by step, Simon. But off the top of your head, what sticks out about what we saw over the past week?
Oh, yeah, look, obviously you brought up the scoring. There's a bloke called Bryce Cotton who stood out to me. He's going to be all right. Yeah, look, the thing that stood out to me was probably Cairns and in watching that game, and I was a little disappointed. Like, they've had a really rough trot with health, and sometimes, having been there too many times in that situation, missing players is not always the hardest part. Bringing players back in and finding the groove and the rhythm for everybody, like, it is a disruption. And I just thought there were some dangerous signs there from Cairns down the stretch of that game. They're fresh, they're at home. Yeah, it worried me a little bit. They've got a lot to play for. Certainly not discounting the talent. They do have a lot of talent on that roster, but I know they were missing some players. But I was a little disappointed for 40 that I thought the players leaned down a little bit. Obviously, Adelaide's back to their scoring best at home. Yeah, and I thought the we did drop one in Brisbane that I was a little disappointed in. But I also felt like in that first quarter, we played some of our best basketball this season. And so tip of the hat to Brisbane. They're playing some really good basketball. I know they dropped one to Sydney, but they're playing some good basketball right now. And when they get going, they can be difficult to stop. But I thought we could possibly have defended a little bit sturdier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's get to your votes in the Player of the Year award, thanks to Sports Card World as well. So, I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the world that would be giving anyone but Bryce Cotton another 5 votes. I mean, 44 more points in that win against the Taipans. We'll talk more about him shortly. So he's got another 5 votes. He's now clearly the leader, and I mean, it's not even a discussion, is it, right now, that he's the MVP of the league? I mean, we talked in the first half of the season how Parker Jackson-Cartwright was going great, Kendrick Davis was going great, Trey Kell was an early leader, Montrezl Harrell was in the mix, but it's not even a discussion right now. I mean, he would have to not play from here until the end of the season to not win, would he?
I'd still vote for him. He's the best player in the league, and has been for a number of years. I think there's some MVPs that he was very, very unlucky not to get. Sometimes, there can be, you can take a player for granted at times. I think there's been times where perhaps there's been a little bit of fatigue of like, okay, it's just too easy to give him the award. Who's next? But for me, he's the best every year he plays and has been for pretty much since he's come into the league. So, look, amazing the tear he's on at the moment. It's very rare to see somebody in this kind of form. I was privileged enough to watch pretty much all of Andrew Gaze's career, going back to the Melbourne Tigers' first season in the league, and there were tears, and there's that year he averaged 44 odd points a game. I think it was an 87, but this is right up there, and the game's a little shorter. The game's different. You used to be able to run an offense and get wide open layups because the defense wasn't that advanced back then. So I feel like to see what we're seeing in today's modern game is really special, and I hope people are appreciating it.
I hope so too. So to round out the votes, Kendrick Davis, another 4 votes. I mean, he's playing tremendous. Any other season, he'd be the best player in the league right now if there wasn't Bryce, and he is second on your leaderboard. Nathan Sobey, especially on Sunday, the way that he affected that game in every way. I mean, we know what a scorer he can be, but his defense was great. He got in the lanes and pulled off some great steals. His rebounding was great. He did a bit of everything. I really liked what he did. And the way he handled himself going back to Brisbane, I thought he played well back on Thursday night as well. Jalen Adams, another 2 votes. You can clearly see what a better team the Sydney Kings are when he's playing, and also when he's off the ball, which we'll get to a little bit later. And Tyler Harvey, he had a huge game against Melbourne. So a lot of good performances, but everyone's sort of playing second fiddle to Bryce, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a lot of guys that missed the top 5 this week that I thought, geez, really, Casey Prather's playing some good basketball. I really need to give that consideration. And Tyrell Harrison's playing great basketball, and it's been a lot of great contributors over the last couple of rounds. And it's
you've got another guy too.
Difficult.
You got another guy on your team, Matt Hurt too, that is probably a little bit unlucky too.
I keep overlooking him, don't I? He's definitely right there. Well, I'm not overlooking him. He's kind of I try to make sure I'm not too South East Melbourne centric. So
you have to because our good mate Julian O'Brien's watching very closely, isn't he?
He's on me even when I'm not voting for them.
Yes. Have any of your players picked up on it? Has any of your players mentioned you're voting at all?
I get some strange looks at times on a Monday morning when a player thinks they might have been in the votes and didn't get it. So, but no one's actually said anything, but I've certainly noticed the body language.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. But it's fair to say if you're a Phoenix player getting votes, you probably have to work a little bit harder. So if you're in the votes, you've well and truly earned it. It's like the old thing when if you're a coach and your son's playing on your team, everyone thinks you're going to favour him, but in the end, you end up being a lot harder on him, don't you? I mean, you push unless you're Brendan Joyce, but in general, you treat your son a lot harder just because you don't want to be seen to be showing any favouritism.
I'm pretty sure our kids have probably missed out on a few trophies through the years.
Yep, there we go. Let's talk a bit more about Bryce. So another 44 points against the Cairns Taipans on Saturday night up in Cairns. He didn't score in the first 9 minutes of the game, Simon. I mean, he had 0 points up until a minute ago in the first quarter. Then he had made a couple of free throws and then hit a shot just before quarter time. And then for the rest of the game, he ends up with 44 points. So efficient as well. Cody talked about this last week. He's shooting at such a high clip. To score 44 points on 27 shots is an incredible performance, especially given the attention that he's receiving. I mean, you look at the defense, I think Pedro Bradshaw, Jonah Antonio, even Taron Armstrong at times, they probably feel like they played decent defense on him for a lot of the game, but he still shoots 7 of 27, goes 3 of 6 from 3. Didn't have a lot of free throws again, only the 8 free throws. Before we get to this whole 4-game stretch, what did you make of his game against Cairns, just in particular?
I was actually surprised going into the game where he mentioned that it was his favourite place to play. Yeah. I have vague recollections of 40 having a little bit of success with him, with some funky arrangements and structures from a defensive standpoint. But obviously, the thing about special athletes, and Bryce is definitely a special athlete, is that they have that gear and that personal drive that if they've been stopped before by a certain team, it almost spurs them on to go on to greater heights. So in my mind, I can remember those games where he's kept him quiet. I'm sure he's torched the heck out of them on other occasions as retribution. But I just want to throw this in there. I kind of love it when you get to the line 8 times and it's only 8 times. That's certainly a Perth attitude, because we would love to get players to the line 8 times.
It's more just a Bryce thing. I mean, usually you would think if he's scoring 44 points, he's probably getting sort of 16 times to the line. That's generally what he would usually get, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he definitely gets looked after there. There's no doubt that he gets a lot of reward for his work and gets the line a lot. The thing I've loved about this streak that he's been on, and I think this is the major area that's kind of been a little different than, say, earlier in the season. I know early in the season he just wasn't hitting anything from mid-range.
Yep.
His float game was off. He wasn't really overly efficient at the rim. His 3-ball was still, deadly, and he obviously gets himself to the line. So he's still punching out scores. But the last 3-4 weeks or whatever it is, his float game and his pull-up jumper are right back to an all-time best. And that's maybe because he can go to that a little bit more. He's maybe not getting as deep on his penetration, which maybe restricts him to 8 free throws. But look, his 3-level scoring right now is just through the roof.
Yeah, so across this 4-game stretch, so against the Breakers, against the Hawks, against the 36ers, against the Taipans, he's averaging 48 points, but just as impressive to me. I mean, you can be scoring, but I mean, to be setting up his teammates as well. He's averaging 5.3 assists over this stretch, and then it's the efficiency. So he's shooting at 64.6% from the field, 55.3 from 3, and he barely misses a free throw, so he's 94% at the line. There's so much to like because he's so efficient, but he's also not forgetting that he's playing on a team, and he's also finding his teammates as well.
Yeah, well, obviously you're going to demand so much attention, it's going to free up your teammates. And that's one of the things where, for me, he's the MVP every year, is he just makes everyone around him better just by his sheer presence and the attention that you have to put into him and the work you have to put into preparing for Bryce Cotton as a coaching staff every time you're coming up against Perth. Some of these guys can slip under the radar because, the spotlight's on Bryce. And, look, he's always been an unselfish player, maybe too unselfish at times. And, look, he's just a scoring marvel. And, I hope he gets that NBA offer real soon.
Yeah.
Maybe before Christmas.
When do you play them next?
Oh man,
you have a trip back. You have a trip back to Perth in January. I know that much.
Mate, we're in Perth every couple of weeks. What are you talking about? No, our third trip to Perth to play Perth will be, I think it's February or maybe late January.
Yeah, I think so because I touched base with Josh King about catching up with him, and he said he'll see me in January. So, So, is there any reason he can't keep it going? I mean, he's averaging 48 points over 4 games. Can he keep it going? And the second part to that is, if you're an opposition team, what the hell can you do to try to stop him?
I think it's unlikely that it keeps going at this level, just because of the efficiencies are just so over the top. It's just difficult to maintain that. He's always a good player. And, this can if he's dropping 30 points he's still the best player in the league.
Yeah.
So even if his efficiency drops to 50 to sub 50%, he's still going to get big numbers and make everyone around him better. But look, I think it's unlikely that this streak continues till the end of the season. But having said that, I would never, ever doubt the man. If someone can do it, it could be Bryce, because he's just such a competitor. So maybe we strike that from the record.
We don't need to give him motivation next time he plays your team.
No,
you need to be very careful. Last thing on him. So, what in your mind, what does his future look like beyond this season? So, as far as I know, he doesn't have an NBA out clause in his contract, and I don't know if he would want to use it even if he did. So, I think he stays here for the rest of this season. But like I talked about with Cody last week, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the NBA for the rest of this season once the NBL season finishes, and then beyond that, he might even stay in the NBA. But he's also going to be getting offers from all over the world, and probably most NBL clubs are going to try to make a run for him as well. What do you see his future being beyond this season?
It's whatever he wants it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Bryce personally other than to shake his hand after a game, and usually after he's dropped a bucket load of points on me. So, look, it's up to him exactly what he wants to do. The NBA thing, there's no doubt Bryce Cotton could be an effective NBA player, and whether or not his time has come and gone, it's up to NBA executives. And whether he fits, like the thing about Bryce and why he's been so great is that for the most part, everything's geared around Bryce Cotton and what he can do. He goes to the NBA, he's not that guy anymore. No. He's going to be a part. And whether or not they assess him and say, well, he can be a defensive guy, he can rebound, he can do this, he can be a primary ball handler, all those sorts of things. They need to make a decision on whether or not he can do that, and whether or not that fits what they're doing. And, so that's a kind of a different discussion. Can he play in the NBA? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But does he have the intangibles that the NBA will be looking for that separate him from one of the guys already, in their G League system? It's up to the NBA executives to make those calls. But look, he's an incredible talent. Europe, Asia, he can play wherever he wants. I'd love to see him in the NBL, even if it's not in the Phoenix uniform. I'm sure every club GM is hitting the NBL up for a big chunk of change to try and make him an ambassador of the league, to make their offer a little bit sweeter. But look, I'd be very surprised to not see him playing in Perth.
Yeah, I feel similar. I talked about it last week. I feel like if he stays in the NBL, it's hard to see him not staying in Perth, just because even if another club can match what the Wildcats can offer, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to offer more. So that's just kind of where I sit on that. But he could end up anywhere, and probably wherever he's not. It's a combination of money, but also where he and his family will be happiest. So I think he's going to have a lot of options to weigh up. But let's take our first break, Simon. Let's catch our breath. We'll hear from Tap Touch, and then we'll talk about some non-Bryce things afterwards.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball has even bounced? Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? You've got the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. I'm here with Simon Mitchell this week, and let's keep the talk going, Simon. I talked to Cody about this last week. I want to get your thoughts now from someone that's still involved at club level and who's been a coach for a long time. Why, since the FIBA break, are we all of a sudden seeing an offensive explosion? I mean, just this past weekend again, we saw the winning teams, they averaged 109 points a game. So across the 7 games, 109 points was the average winning score. The lowest was Sydney's 93 points in that last game against Brisbane. Even the losing teams, they're still putting up 91.6 points a game, which I think is probably still higher than what we were seeing before the FIBA break for winning teams. What are you seeing out there that's changed? Is it as simple as everyone's playing at a faster pace, so there's more possessions in the game, or what do you put it down to?
I think without a doubt that the speed of the game has increased since the FIBA break. Yeah. The other thing, I guess, also is that some of the bodies start to wear down as the season goes on, and that generally can hurt you defensively. And so I think there's a combination of many things, but I feel like we're shooting the ball a lot better too.
Yep.
It just seemed like early in the season, there was weeks where it was a real struggle. And yeah, I mean, that's all I can really put it down to. But I've never seen anything like this where there's a fever break and all of a sudden everyone's scoring 20 points a game or everyone across the board.
Yeah.
I was talking to a journo yesterday and he asked me if I had the numbers. I'm like, no, I don't. He goes, well, can you get me the numbers? I'm like, no, I don't have that time. You can get the numbers. And he came back to me. He goes, it's 20 points per game more for each team. So it's crazy.
It is. Does the defense have anything to do with it? I mean, has the defense dropped off, or is it a simple fact of the combination of the faster pace and the better shooting that is leading to it? What do you think?
I feel like certainly that from this year to last year, I don't think the elite rim protectors outside of maybe Will Magnay are as dominant this year.
Yep, sure.
If you go to Melbourne, Huck Porty was uber elite at defending the rim, and JLA, whilst maybe not as good a defender as Huck Porty, could certainly defend the rim. And you swing that over to Tassie, and they had Magnay and Marcus Lee. So the four best shot blockers in the league were in the finals. But if I look across the board right now, Marcus Lee's out at Melbourne at the moment, and they certainly don't have the athleticism on their front line that they had, at the centre position at least, as they had last year. So it can really affect it. Like we cropped a lot of criticism over the years at South East of not being a good defensive team and all this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, you kind of need someone who can protect the rim, and we weren't able to secure that player. We've gone after them, but other clubs have been able to nab them. And that was one of the things we were really happy about getting Jordan Hunter, was that it made us a little bit more potent at the defensive end from a rim protection aspect. And I think that he's one of the major reasons why we've been able to lower our defensive rating this year. I think we're sitting third right now in the NBL from a defensive rating standpoint. So I know that's
even more impressive considering you would have been last after those first 5 games, just about.
I think we were third last after the first 5 games. I think it was maybe Brisbane and potentially Brisbane and Cairns were below us. But like there was the 3 teams at the bottom who were kind of had disgusting numbers, and then we've gone from there to being third in the league since round 4. So yeah, certainly an improvement from that aspect. But yeah, look, it's hard. I'm surprised at the criticism that you hear amongst some commentators or talking heads in the basketball world that they don't like the scoring, and then when there's good defence, there's not enough scoring. It's kind of like, what makes you happy, man?
Yeah, it's more fun to watch, surely, isn't it? And especially if we're trying to attract a new audience and sort of the casual fans, this is the way to do it, isn't it? They don't want to come and see a 70 to 67 New Zealand Breakers Perth Wildcats grind. They want to see 110 to 108, don't they? Surely.
Yeah, and I think the league made that decision many years ago when they decided that they were going to really be strict on how you can defend the ball.
Yep.
And whilst there was probably an overreaction from the referees at one point where it was just ridiculous, where you just couldn't defend at all without them blowing their whistle, I feel like they were in that kind of middle ground right now where, okay, we'll let you defend, but not too much. Unless you're Melbourne, they let those guys hold the hell out of you.
Yes, and I would have thought Damien Martin got a career full of good whistles as well.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned the Phoenix. Let's talk about the Phoenix. Before we take an overall look at things, how do you look back on last weekend? Like we said, did a lot of things right in Brisbane, but the Bullets just got away in that fourth quarter, and they're one team playing at a really fast pace now. When they have their shooters up and rolling, and then they can dump it inside to Tyrell Harris, and they're a really dangerous team. So they got that over you, but then to bounce back against Melbourne, and Melbourne, they haven't lost 3 games in a row for more than 2 years. So you knew you were going to cop them pretty fired up, and you had beaten them earlier in the season as well. But it was a really good performance, as dominant a performance in a throwdown as you can get in that second half. So how do you reflect back on that weekend?
Yeah, obviously there's a little disappointment to the way we defended in the second half against Brisbane. I think it was maybe the first 2 possessions after half time we scored buckets and pushed the lead out to 15.
Yes.
And look, it's kind of, we've had a chat about it this week. It's a bit of an issue for us that we can get a little comfortable when we're down 15. When we're up 15. Yeah, but we've been also reversing, double-digit, when we've given up double-digit leads and been able to claw back in, and as we did in the game against United.
Cairns. And against Cairns the week before,
Yeah, and we did it against Tassie a little bit earlier, and so it's not unusual. It's such a potent game now when teams can get out and get on little runs, and the use of the three ball, if you're hitting that or getting to the line, it just makes the game so much easier for you from an offensive standpoint. So, yeah, so from my standpoint, what did I think of the Phoenix? A little disappointed. Took away from some good points from the Brisbane game, but also some clear areas that we'll work on. The Melbourne game at quarter time, I'm like, oh man, this is like going to be. This was the third quarter in a row that we'd given up 30 points.
Yeah, it was.
And to give up 36, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. But from that point on, I thought we were fairly dominant, even though the game was the score was close at times. I felt like that we were executing well. I loved it when D. Walt came in the second half and really orchestrated the victory. Nathan Sobey, I think he had 6 steals for the game, 2 blocks. So his impact at the defensive end, he got dragged 2.5 minutes into the game, I think, and didn't look too pleased about it either. But I thought it was a great coaching move. Nathan's been, there's been some pundits that have been critical of Nathan and some of his decision making. I feel like the last 3 weeks he's really got on top of that. And I thought he started the game with a couple of that's questionable. The hook was in quickly, and then he made the adjustments, and the team really benefited from it. And Matt Hurt just continues to be unstoppable. Still love to see him touch the ball a little bit more, but he's just he finds ways to score. And those guys really, really, after that first quarter, locked in defensively. They gave away 23, 20, and 18 points respectively, and that's what we want to pride ourselves on, and that's the direction we need to get into. We know that the good defensive teams are the teams that are there in the end, and we want to be that team.
What have you made of Josh King? From a personal level, what's you like to get to know now that you've got to know him in person, and the fact that you're 6-3 under him, and the way that the team seems to have really embraced him. I guess you have to pretend to like your coach, but it looks like there's a genuine like there between him and his players already. What have you made him 9 games into his coaching career in the NBL?
Yeah, I don't think there's a mystery. Sitting on the sideline, I think you can get a pretty good gauge of what he's about. Certainly the style of play is consistent. I think when we played in Perth last time, that was probably the most disappointing game for me as a spectator. In the sense that I don't think we looked like the team that was coached by Josh King. We were reluctant to get up the floor, and Perth did a great job of throwing the ball to the 4-man and trying to, okay, well, Matt Hurt, do you want to get up the floor? And I thought that they did a good job of sort of taking away our structures and from a defensive aspect. Yeah,
you also got whistled out of that game as well, though, so you couldn't play the way that you wanted to play.
Well, that happens a little in Perth, doesn't it? But there's one guy that when you get him in Perth, you're like, oh man, we've got to be 20 points better tonight, and we had him on that night. So, so that's not a surprise, and there's a great introduction for Josh to realise what it's like in the cauldron of playing in Perth. But look, you know what you're getting. You're going to have early ball pickups. We're going to play with great pace. We're going to compete on the boards. And for us, I think to continue, we have to make sure that in-between game on the boards is really a barometer for us. When we've been beat on the boards, like we were in the Brisbane game, the opposition can get the better of us. So it's, I think it's a good barometer for us. We seem to be relatively solid at both ends of the floor right now, but that in-between game's a real barometer for us. So, hitting the boards, it was good to see us get a win on the boards against Melbourne.
You've touched on most of the guys I wanted to get your thoughts on, but Geordie Hunter is one guy I want to pick your brain about because he clearly was a big recruiting target. You've made him the captain now that he's come into the club, and he's playing some terrific basketball, but he's also found a little bit of an aggressive streak at times. And I love listening to him talk, and he's talked about how he's tried to work with Luke Longley over the last couple of years when he's been in Sydney about how to find that, because to me I see a lot of similarities with both those guys. They're both very, very laid back, very passive type people away from the basketball court. So Luke spent his entire career trying to get people to find that inner monster inside him to try to dig out that aggressive streak. And now Geordie's trying to find that himself, but he's finding it at times. I mean, a couple of the dunks on people the last couple of weeks have shown that, and he's not afraid to celebrate in their face afterwards, which I think is great to see. What do you make of his development since you first got him to the club?
I'm a huge fan of Geordie Hunter. He's going to be one of those guys who continues to get better, I believe. He's a real barometer for us. Like, if he's not playing well or gets in foul trouble, it's hard for us to cover. But when he's on top of his game, I don't think we lose. When he plays well, we seem to get the win. So we've got a lot of really good depth at that centre position amongst Australian players outside of that Olympic squad. When you consider Geordie, and then there's Isaac Humphries and Sam Froling, Will Magno was in the Olympic last one, but he's a fringe guy, right? So we throw him in that group. There's a really solid group of guys. Geordie may be at the bottom of that list, or previously may have been considered at the bottom of that list, but I think from an athletic standpoint and a potential standpoint, for me, he can shift to the top of that list, and I think he's got a career internationally for Australia if he fixes a few things. One, he needs to be more consistent against the bigger body guys. A guy like Tyrell Harrison's given him some problems this year.
Yep.
We've got to make sure that happens. I think his posture off the ball could really do with some work, and he could sit down a little bit more off the ball and keep his hands up and take up space, and little things from that, because then he's already engaged in his glutes, and then he can actually contest more shots at the rim. There's things like that. He can play at a high level and pick and roll and those. I think he gets on top of that, and he's made great inroads during the course of this season. If he can get on top of that, he's developing that perimeter shot even, he's going to be a real heck of a headache for other teams for the next few years.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep working down through this list, Simon. Let me pick your brains about what's happened at the New Zealand Breakers. I mean, clearly at the FIBA break, they made the personnel change. So they moved on Freddie Gillespie, bringing in Tacko Fall. It's fair to say it hasn't worked. I think that's the great understatement. So they went from 7-3 in second spot at that point. They've now lost 6 in a row, and they're 7-9, and they're in second last spot. And it's all happening at the defensive end for them. So they were only giving up 82.5 points a game in those first 10 before the FIBA break. In these 6 games since, they're giving up 106.3 points a game. They're losing by 20 plus points across that stretch, and it's a difficult one because clearly you won't say this, but you read between the lines, and Coach Coppin didn't want this to happen, and he's made mention of how his team has now had to completely learn how to play a completely different style, just as they were starting to figure out the way they wanted to play, and now they're basically learning from scratch again, and they're not having a lot of practice time in between games to work on it, so it's not working for them. What do you make of what's happened there?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. Freddie Gillespie was having his own issues early in the season. Yep. You go back to, and it wasn't a surprise. I mean, Freddie's foul prone even in Europe, and they're a little more physical there. And when he came to our league, he could really struggle to string minutes together in the preseason and in some of the practice games and early in the season. And that wasn't a surprise, I guess. It's not that he's not the first big to come to Australia and not quite grasp the way the referees blow their whistle here. But he just seemed to be getting the last couple of games before he took the contract in Europe, just seemed to be getting the hang of it and was making significant contributions, especially defensively.
Yeah.
He's protecting that rim at a really high level.
I also love the screens he was setting. He was helping Parker Jackson-Cartwright and Matt Mooney get free a lot just with the screens he was setting as well.
100%, and this is probably one of the areas that he needed to make some adjustment. He's one of the great moving screen centers in European basketball. And when he brought that down here, he was going to get whistled for a lot of offensive fouls, but it felt like he was starting to get that adjustment, and he's a big body and he enjoys hitting people and rolling out of there. I mean, that's, his offensive game really is getting those rollouts and getting on the rim. You don't want to really throw him the ball in the block and say, go get us a bucket. He's that pick and roll guy. So look, he really suited what they were doing, and really was suited what Parker Jackson-Cartwright was doing, and to lose him, and like, it's just, you've got a completely different type of player now. Tacko, if you want to benefit from him, you've got to get him around the rim, and it's not the way basketball's played for a lot now,
especially when everyone's now playing so quick.
Yeah, and when they get down a little bit, if they fall behind, it's hard for them to catch up playing slow ball.
Yep.
And obviously the issues of the pick and roll. Tacko's going to stand in that charge zone. And, look, Parker's a small-body guy, and if he's getting picked up high, it's hard for him to continually get over those screens without any help from a big. So, look, it's created some issues for them. I thought I'm not going to say overachieved, but they surprised me early.
Oh, sure.
And certainly on the back of some brilliance from Parker. But he's cooled off a little bit since Freddie's gone. And I know he had the great game in Perth, but I feel like sometimes when you play Perth, your numbers might get elevated a little bit. Look, they'll figure it out. They're certainly a dangerous team. But look, they need to figure it out. It's quite the slide that they're on. But this is one of those seasons, right? We started off 0-5, and where it's just barely sitting in the six. Melbourne, they've lost 3. Like, it's going to be. And Tassie started off poorly. Now they've won 5 in a row. So it's going to be a fluctuating season. And for their sake and their fans' sake, I hope they can turn it around. But they've done a lot of travel. There's a lot of fatigue, and it's got to be frustrating right now for them.
Yeah, we'll get to it later in our preview. But they haven't played a home game at Spark Arena for almost 2 months as well. So it's they've had a lot to deal with. But you mentioned the Jack Jumpers, so. They're now finding form. So they won 5 in a row. They got that big win last week over the Breakers. So they're up into the top 6 as well. They're in 5th position at 8-8. They scored 100 points for the first time this season as well, and they've now made a big move since then. So they've moved on Craig Sword, which I'm not surprised about, because I think anyone that's seen him play so far this season probably felt like it was going to happen, but perhaps it wasn't going to happen now. So I felt like if it was going to happen, it would have happened earlier. But they have made the decision. Maybe it was a good timing because they don't play now until Monday night. So they did have 10 days in between games. But the player that they've signed, Ian Hummer, he looks like he's the sort of replacement they needed for Jack McVeigh from the start. So he's a power forward. He's not going to be the same sort of shooter, but he does play the position they need. They've actually been playing this whole season without a genuine power forward. So he does seem to fit their needs a little bit better than what Craig Sword did once they lost Jack McVeigh. What do you think of the winning streak they're on, and what do you think of bringing in a new import this late into the season?
Yeah, well, first of all, how many times are we going to be surprised by the same thing over and over again every year? It's oh, Tassie, I didn't see that coming. Oh, Tassie, I didn't see that coming. We should just start to expect it a little bit now.
Sure.
The one thing that's really been consistent, and I've been amazed actually by Tassie this year, and I think it probably needs a little bit more praise, is their ability to defend at such a high level when your offense has been so horrible at times. They've had some games where scoring looks like a chore, and it's really hard to continually defend possession after possession after possession when the ball's not going through the hoop. And it wasn't going through the hoop for them for quite a while there. So their team disciplines and their structures and their commitment to playing a certain style of basketball has been there throughout the course of this year. Now they've found a little bit of touch at the offensive end. The return of Sean McDonald has really elevated them as well. And I think now that Macca is back in the team and playing good minutes, now Craig is maybe he becomes a little more redundant, and they can now move on him to bring that 4-man in. Again, I'm speculating. I don't know what the inner sanctum was thinking, but look, from an outsider looking in, maybe it makes a little bit more sense at this time of the year with Macca coming back and being settled.
Yeah, I think so. Have you come across Ian Hummer in any of your scouting or vision watching over the years? Is he someone that's ever crossed your desk?
No, he's not someone that I've certainly been aware of him.
Yep.
But not someone that we've put a lot of time into. Clearly a role player. For a number of years. Kid went to Princeton, so
yes.
He's smarter than me, so I wouldn't want to keep those sorts of players around.
No, that's fair enough. And he last played in Japan as well, and role player numbers. I mean, 7.5 points, 4.9 rebounds. But gee, if he does that for Tassie, he's giving them exactly what they need. They don't need him to be a big time player because they've got virtually the 3 guards now. I think they'll settle on having Crawford, Doyle, McDonald in that in that guard spots. And then you got Magnay and Hummer up front, and then you got some pretty good role players behind them. They've ended up with a pretty good team, I think, in the end, once it all settles.
Yeah, look, the one thing that Scott Roth is very, very clear on with his players is role clarification. And, this seems like a Scott Roth kind of guy. And he's going to come in, and from the first game, you're going to be like, oh, no, he fits. That's the kind of guy, it's going to be Scott's kind of guy. So, look, they've certainly improved from that perspective, in that they did need a little help there after losing McVeigh. Tough situation. And one of the things Scott's done throughout the years is get his team together early and sign his players really early, and they get into camp before everybody, and they're up and about before everybody. They did that again this year, and it does leave you, I guess, at risk that if you do lose a guy, that you're like, hang on a minute.
Yes.
this team, and look, it's no one, I'm not going to say no one expected Jack to be in the NBA. Well, very few would have expected Jack to get to the NBA. He's not your typical blueprint of an NBA athlete. His competitiveness, his mental strength, and his form certainly warrants him being somewhere around the NBA fringe or inside the league. But he's not the blueprint athlete that you kind of associate with the NBA. And the fact that someone's taken a chance to have seen this real talent, it's probably taken not just Tassie by surprise, but quite a few others. And look, I think they've done pretty well to turn this around. Sean McDonald's playing unbelievable basketball, and he really has set this team up.
No, absolutely has. So if we haven't learned by now, then it's on us that anyone that wrote them off too early. But I'd be shocked if they don't end up at least making the top six from here, and you wouldn't want to play them in a play-in game. So we'll see how they go once they get Ian Hummer back. I assume he's in town now, and he'll be there for that open air game on Monday night. So let's take our last break, Simon. When we come back, we'll a couple more things to race through. Then we'll get our round 13 preview thanks to Tap Touch.
He'll make it for sure. That's why I backed him on Tap Touch.
You got the touch. You got the power. Got the touch? Choose Tap Touch. Better your bet. Download the app today.
Imagine what you could be buying instead.
Okay, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle, last segment for this week, and I'm here with Simon Mitchell. Simon, before we get to our preview for this week, thanks to Tab Touch, what do you think of the Adelaide 36ers with their two big guns back, Montrezl Harrell and Kendrick Davis, back in the lineup? It's offset by not having Sunday Detch or DJ Vasiljevic, but the pair of them put up 57 points, 15 rebounds, 14 assists between them. Harrell was pretty good. Davis was outstanding. Can they stay afloat, do you think, with those two leading the way, even without DJ and Sunday in the short term?
Be careful what I say. We're playing them, aren't we? So,
no, you are on Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, look, the New Zealand Breakers scored 94 points on them last weekend, and I think that's concerning. The defense has not been great. I think they might be the second lowest ranked defensive team in the league. It's certainly bottom three. They concern me with their road record right now. 1 win, 5 losses on the road, and some of those losses have been really poor. So I'm holding out on making any sort of...
From memory, I think they're giving up almost 108 points a game on the road. I mean, it's they can't stop anyone once they leave Adelaide.
Yeah, so for now, I'm not as excited about their prospects as maybe some of the NBL talking heads are. I know they're doing a lot of work trying to pump up Montrez. But I've been tremendously impressed with Kendrick Davis.
Yes.
I think his form has just been off the charts, not just scoring the ball, but just distributing as well. It's very, very dangerous to pick and roll. Isaac's a bit of a barometer for them. They're going to miss those two guys you spoke of, though, in Sunday and DJ, and it exposes maybe a little bit of lack of depth. I guess they'd be pretty pleased to see Jerome Martin hitting a few jumpers.
Yep.
But, whether that's going to be a consistent thing or not, we'll have to wait and see. But, look, certainly they're potent offensively, so they're always a threat. And they have been shooting the three ball pretty well.
Yeah, they have. They haven't been taking a lot of them, but they've been shooting it just about as well as anybody. Yeah, we'll see how they go on Saturday night. Hopefully they don't enjoy the roof being open, Simon.
Yeah. No, I think the roof might give them a little bit more trouble than the 1-3-1 zone that New Zealand implemented when shooting from three.
Okay, last thing I want to get your thoughts on before we get to our preview. Melbourne United. So they've now lost 3 straight for the first time since late 2022. And in the 3 losses to the Bullets, the Hawks and the Phoenix, they're giving up 112.3 points a game. And it's interesting what's happened to their defense. So over the first 10 games of the season, they were only conceding 81.8 points, and now over the last 8, it's 99.8 points a game. You're probably not too unhappy about it, but when you take that hat off, what do you think of? Should you be concerned if you're a United fan?
Yeah. No, I think they should be concerned a little. One, they've got this long road stretch coming up on the back of the 3 losses. I think early in the season, they maybe I think they might have had they had Tassie a couple of times early in the season who couldn't put the ball in the hole to save themselves, and I think they did their annual smashing of Perth over in Perth, and they had a couple of teams that they've had some success against defensively.
A big home win against Adelaide in that stretch too.
Yeah. So I think it might have masked really where they're at from a defensive standpoint to an extent. Now, we know they've got Shaley's a premier defender. Daly works as hard as anybody at that end of the floor. But what they've lost is the rim protection, especially with Marcus Lee on the sideline. So we mentioned it earlier with Puck Porty and JLA last year. You had 2 of the premier rim protectors going around the league, and that's the difference sometimes between being a good and bad defensive team, and they've struggled to protect that rim in recent weeks. So, look, there's signs there that should be concerned. The other concern I would have, and I know Dino would be furious about it, is just Dean Mickelman talks about the head on a platter. There's moments in games where you see the other team, they're distressed, they're arguing at the refs, they get it, and there's signs there, and you're like, hey, we've got these guys. I was watching Melbourne on the weekend, and even when they were leading, I'm thinking, they're really preoccupied with the referees right now. And I felt like from an opposition standpoint, I'm thinking, I think we're going to get these guys. I feel like that's something that Dean will address. It's something he's not fond of seeing, but it certainly seems to have crept into Melbourne's persona in recent weeks. They seem to be really preoccupied with the refs, and let's be honest, they get a pretty good run. It's not often that you can come into the league as an NBL rookie, and he's not a rookie now, but you see some of these guys, they come in, they're allowed to hold, grab, and you're like, oh, geez, there's some privileges there, but it's the uniform. And, they play a very aggressive style and very physical style, and any player that's going to play court time is going to play that style, and they get away with a lot. It just seems that maybe when there's a couple of whistles that go against them, that they've been a little bit ill-disciplined in the way that they've demonstrated with the referees. So it's something I know Dean puts a lot of value in, and I'm sure that he's addressed that this week.
No, we'll see how they go on Monday against the Jack Jumpers. Okay, let's get to our round 13 preview. Simon, thanks to Tab Touch, starts on Friday night with a doubleheader. New Zealand Breakers, they're finally back at Spark Arena, but they're up against the Sydney Kings team that is now starting to find their groove a little bit. Do you give the Breakers any chance?
Does this count as a road game from New Zealand, since they don't really know what Spark Arena's all about?
Yeah, it might as well. It's their first game at Spark Arena since November the 2nd.
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it? It's really tough for their players. I mean, they've done an incredible amount of travel. I remember last time we spoke that they were going up to Sydney to play, and they had an amazing win up there, but they just clocked over 50,000 kilometres travelled. Yeah. And, look, I think they're a chance. I certainly do. I think they're a chance when you've got Parker Jackson Cartwright. I think you're always a chance. I think it's unlikely. But, yeah, I certainly think they're a chance.
The second game on Friday, Sunshine Stoush. Brisbane Bullets, they're playing pretty well. I mean, I know they fell away in the fourth quarter against Sydney, but, yeah, for the most part, they've been playing pretty well over the last 3 weeks, up against the Cairns Taipans on a 12-game losing streak. I mean, if the Bullets want to put themselves in the top 6 race, this is a game they can't afford to drop, can they?
Oh, I wouldn't mind seeing them drop it. Look, there were some bad signs there from Cairns in the back end of that game against Perth on the weekend. Brisbane have been one of the form teams for the last couple of weeks. It's hard to back Cairns in on this one. But having said that, if they have a few players returning from injury, then who knows? they've certainly got a lot of talent on the roster. They just haven't been able to finish off games. But yeah, I had some real concerns at the end of the last game for Cairns, and I'm going to be barracking for them, but I'm going to tip Brisbane in this one.
Saturday, open air game for the South East Melbourne Phoenix against the Adelaide 36ers. Have you ever been a part of an open air game before at any point in your life, Simon?
Several times, yeah.
Okay.
An amazing night. The atmosphere is kind of eerie as the sun starts to drift behind the stands, and the daylight becomes nighttime, and it happens during the course of the game.
Yeah.
So it does have a real unique atmosphere to it. But once the tip-off goes, you kind of, from a coaching standpoint, you stop looking through the roof and you're totally focused on the game. But you do feel the breeze come through once in a while, and it just kind of, oh, hang on, we're still outdoors.
You might have played one in Perth, didn't you? Were you part of one in Perth?
No. I played a few with it at JCA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Had some cancelled as well. But I actually was the only game I went to last year was Melbourne versus Perth in the JCA game as well.
That's right.
It was great experience watching it just as a spectator. So, look, it's an amazing atmosphere. Anyone who's thinking of going to an open air game, hurry up and get a ticket because they're going really quickly. I think there's record numbers of sales in the first 3 days of this week for a game for South East Melbourne. So there's not many tickets left.
I saw a promotional video with Coach Cole giving away some tickets. Have you come across Coach Cole in your travels?
No.
Right.
Coach Ken Cole I have, certainly.
Yes.
But no, Coach Cole's not
had
the privileges yet.
Ask your marketing department about him. I actually went to school with him, so when I saw him pop up on your club's social media channels, I thought, hey, I recognise that guy. He's actually Heredier Lumumba's brother. So there you go.
There you go.
Yep. There we go. That's another story for another day. Sunday. This will be another fun game. So Illawarra Hawks sitting on top of the table, up against Bryce Cotton and the Perth Wildcats.
This is probably game of the round, right? This is going to be an absolute ripper. The form team right now is Illawarra, and the form player is Bryce Cotton. And can they shut him down? How many players do you have to send to him? Really looking forward to that one. I'm going to tip Illawarra. I think their depth right now, what I love about Illawarra is when you watch them play, those guys genuinely like hanging out. They just genuinely like each other's company. There's just a certain camaraderie that you can see in this team at the moment, and that can take a team a long way. And they're going to be tough to beat. I think they get Perth in this one. No,
you're right. They're a real tight unit from the coaching staff right down to the players, aren't they? They're just one group, aren't they? I think that's why they play so well on the road, because they have that bond together. Monday night, another open air game. Melbourne United now the home team for this one against the Jack Jumpers. What are you expecting?
A cold change and rain.
Yes.
Again, get to Ticketek, South East Melbourne versus Adelaide Saturday night. Make sure you get to an open air game. Look, this is a tough one, isn't it? Like, does Melbourne against the ropes? You're like, geez, it's going to turn for them. Tassie have just been a nemesis for Melbourne. I think of all teams right now that Melbourne don't want to face on the back of a 3-game losing streak is Tassie. For whatever reason, they seem to have had more talent in the head-to-head matchup. They seem to have had moments where you're like, okay, Melbourne are going to really win this game and win it comfortably, and Tassie have a way of hanging around against Melbourne. I'm backing the upset on this one. I'm going to go with the Jack Jumpers. Yeah, I haven't seen the odds, but I don't know if it would be an upset at this point. But potentially Chris Golding and Marcus Lee both back. But again, it takes some time to blend those players back as well, like we talked about earlier. There's a game every single day, so we could keep just doing an endless preview every day, but that's stopping on Tuesday. That's the last game we can look forward to this week. On Christmas Eve in Adelaide, the 36ers against the Bullets. Both of them would have played earlier in the weekend, which we'll learn a bit more about both of them. But you played this fixture, I remember a couple of years back when you were the Phoenix coach on Christmas Eve. What are your thoughts? Who do you think would get this one? Adelaide are a different team at home, aren't they? Yes, they are. They score more. Yes. They still give up points. Yep. And Brisbane are scoring at a ridiculous rate right now. I'm going to back Brisbane in for this one. I think they're in really good form right now. I think Tyrell Harrison's the pick of the bunch as far as 5 men go at the moment. And, along with Will Magnay. I think they've both been phenomenal, and they both have different skill sets, but I think they're both at the top of the tree, and I think that he could be the difference.
Yeah, and I think they'll have Josh Bannon back for this weekend as well, which gives them a little bit of depth because they've been riding their starters pretty hard, but he gives them that genuine six-man, so it'll change up what they're doing a little bit, but it also means that Justin doesn't need to ride his starters as much, and I feel like he probably feels like they just got tired on Sunday in Sydney because of the minutes that they'd played over the weekend. So,
I think it's a matchup there that Justin will really like, and that'll be Casey Prather being guarded by Montrezl Harrell. Casey's in really good form at the moment. He holds his own as a four-man defensively. He's always been a very good defender. He's shooting the ball at a high rate, and I think he's going to be very, very difficult for Montrez to guard.
Be able to get whatever he likes in that matchup, wouldn't he?
I suspect.
Yes. All right. It's been a lot of fun picking your brain once again, Simon. Thank you for taking the time. It'll be Christmas by the time we catch up again, by the time this round finishes. So I hope you enjoy your Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the open air game on Saturday. Head to Tab Touch and check out all of the odds there for this NBL round. I'm Chris Pike. I'll wrap it up there, though. Thank you for joining me, Simon, and I'll let you have the final say with whatever might be on your mind.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me on the show again, Chris. It's always a pleasure talking hoops with you. Look, we're about to be spoilt by a whole bunch of basketball. So I know we get a lot of distractions this time of year. There's going to be, trips to go see family, friends, and get down the beach and all those things, but just stick with the basketball. I think we're in for a really special end of the year. And, just going through the numbers as we were talking a little bit earlier off the air, everyone 6-4, 5-5, 4-6 out of those top 8 teams over the last 10 games. Like, it's really hard to separate right now. And it's you never know what you're going to quite see in the NBL at the moment. So look forward to this stretch.
Can you picture the first goal before the ball's even bounced? You might have the touch. When the weather's wet, can you feel who'll triumph? You've got the power. Can you read the footy future in the mullet of a full forward? Then you too might be harnessing the power of the touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.